Hi, I'm Bart Hanson. I'm the owner and operator of CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time every Monday. If you want to call in your hand, check out the phone number in the description.
All right, I got a 2-5 hand. It's a match the stat game, but it's only 1,000 effective.
Okay.
And so the villain is fairly new to the table. I don't have any history with him other than after a few orbits, I can tell he's a thinking player, and he's made a few bluff-catching call-downs. So it folds around to the villain on the button who raises to 15. And so I just call with ace-queen offsuit.
You're in the big blind?
Yes.
Is that, just out of curiosity, is that the standard open for the, like, is that kind of small, like 3x?
No, normally it's 20, and the same. It's typically 4x, and then add a 5 for every limper. It's just that on the button, I'd seen him do it one other time where he raised to 15, and I had like 9-4, so I pitched it.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, this is going to be a partial. Like, I would probably 3-bet here more often than not, just for pure value. You know what I mean? I know we've talked about how 3-betting offsuit hands from out of position are not really necessarily the best thing to do, but ace queen against a button open, like, you're at the top.
Right.
Talk about like 3-betting polar sometimes heads up out of the big blind, but this is value. Like, that falls into that value corridor, especially with the small open. I just think that you're leaving a little bit much on the table, like if you don't just bump this up to like 55 or 60. I mean, I don't think it's terrible just to call, but I do think it's a little bit too strong. But
okay.
Yeah.
So I just called the 15, so we got 30 in the pot.
Okay.
The flop comes ace of diamonds, queen of hearts, 4 of diamonds.
Ace of diamonds, queen of hearts, 4 of diamonds. So you've got top 2, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I check.
Yeah.
Villain bets 20. So several of these spots, I was going to see if when you would check raise or what you do. So I just called instead of check raising the flop.
Usually on ace high boards, I don't usually do a ton of slow playing like in a spot like this because I don't really know what are you gonna. Again, when people slow play like certain types of hands, like, first of all, it's button versus big blind, right? That's a configuration, so that's really good for you. Meaning that, like, I don't expect an ace to really fold here. It's a lot different than if it's in a different configuration, but I can understand sometimes slow playing when the board is going to be, what would they say, dynamic, where there's a possibility that it might change. Like, you flop a set on 9-deuce-3. You got a set of 3s. You think a guy might have 2 overcards, or he's got an overpair, he's going to continue to value bet or bluff overcards later on anyways. That's cool. That's like lockdown, right? You know what I mean? Dynamic, like it's going to change. Like, things are going to change. Here, yeah, I mean, there's a front door diamond draw, but how much more, if this guy doesn't have an ace, how much more money is he going to really put in the pot? I mean, I guess occasionally you might get a double barrel, but I just don't see him bet folding an ace. And that's why I would check raise here from this particular spot. You're also not repping a ton, which is good for you as well here, because normally you probably would have thought you would 3-bet with ace queen, and you probably don't have aces, and you don't have pocket queens. So if I was in this guy's spot, I'd be like, what does this guy have here? He might be check raising me with a flush draw, and I might just call down with an ace the whole way. So that's why I would probably slam dunk check raise here with a very, very high frequency. Sounded to me like you just called.
Yeah, I called with a plan to check raise the turn.
See, the problem with that is that, like, I don't know. I just think it looks so much stronger. To when you check raise.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah. It's just another card that your opponent can't put money. Well, not necessarily even check through, but just more cards that are out there beat there. When there's more cards on the board, there are more combinations of 2 pair that you can have that your opponent can't beat if he has 1 pair, right? Like, say the turn's a 7 and you check raise the turn. Okay, well, you could have queen 7. You know what I mean? Like, you could have ace 7 and now is ace king or is ace jack, doesn't feel all that good about it or something like that. But
right.
Okay, so what's the turn?
8 of clubs.
Okay, so it doesn't bring any straights in, right? I was going to say, like, there's going to be a lot of straight cards that might come in on the turn, but so it's pretty much a blank, right?
So I check, and he bets 55 into 70.
Okay. Uh, 55 into 70. Okay.
And so I check raised to 200.
You guys said that you started with 1,000, right?
Yes.
So if he calls the 200, that you put 400 on the turn, pot will be about, yeah, like 480, something like that. And you've got about, 700 left. That's another reason why, too, that I might start building right away on the flop just to get more money in there. Because on the flop, if he goes 20 and you go like 70 and he calls, you can follow up with maybe like, well, actually, if you get a call here for 200, I guess it's not. I guess you're making a good size raise here, so it's not that bad, but it's just like I said, like I don't know if he's going to call or I don't know if he's going to bet turn. So you made it 200.
He calls.
Okay.
The river is the king of diamonds.
River's the king of diamonds, so front door diamonds come in, right?
Yep.
And you have no diamond in your hand.
No diamond in my hand.
Yep. Okay.
So I check, and before that, I forgot to mention, he asked to see my stack when I check raised to 200. He's like, "Can you move your hands? You just want to see how much I had behind."
Uh-huh.
And knowing he's a thinking player, I would assume he was calculating some type of odds or what he would need to call or hit, something like that. So king of diamonds, check. I check. He bets 450 on the river.
I mean, you obviously just have a bluff catcher here.
Right.
I was going to say, like, if you're checking, I would assume it was to check fold a fair amount because this one's interesting because, like, when he does call the check raise on the turn, he's going to have a fair amount of draws in his range and also some what would be like ace kings and things like that. You don't beat that. Jack 10 is another hand that might double barrel turn that picks up a double gutter on the turn as well. Right. More often than not, at these levels, I don't see people turn top pair types of hands into a bluff for me to really make this call. It actually kind of protects you a little bit too, because if he had a hand like ace jack or ace 10, how often do you see somebody at 2-5 now turn that into a bluff at the end on the river? It doesn't happen that much because they have top pair. So I can't tell you whether or not, it's a call against this guy, but more often than not, given this line on paper, yeah, you probably don't beat much now.
So that was the reason for my call, because I was listening to your recent podcast where you talk about some of your early 5-5 hands where the level of play compared to what you're typically up against is significantly lower.
Yeah.
And so in a session where I'm realizing it's 89% value, and then I do have a pretty big hand against probably the best player of the table that I'm playing against, that I'm trying to not necessarily tangle with every time. I'd rather just avoid the toughest players and win value from the other ones. In this spot, I was going to see what you thought about just, I did fold, but I didn't think there was a reason to hero call when I'm beat by several things you mentioned, the flush, ace, king, jack 10. But I didn't know if there's your approach when you...
There are certain guys that I would bet the river with, too. You know what I mean? Like, there are certain guys where I'm just like, it doesn't even matter. Like, he's going to still call me with an ace. I would have to size down a little bit. It's a bad river because if a guy, he can't beat a flush draw if he thinks you have a flush draw. So it's a little bit villain dependent whether or not I bet the river or not. But if you check the river, which has its own merit, I would think it's a check fold a lot, and especially to this sizing. So I think the question more is, because it's button versus big blind, should we bet the river or should we check fold the river? Like
is
I said,
it a bet fold? If you bet the river small, you bet small and then fold to a shove? Is that your...
Well, I mean, approach? I just can't. You're not going to get raised by anything really, except for a flush. It's just, again, like, just like when you check the river here and the guy bets and I say, these spots are easier at 5-5 because people don't turn hands into bluffs. If you check raise the turn and the guy calls, right, on the turn, and now you bet the river, okay? So let's say that you get to the river and and he called the check raise on the turn. So what does he have in his range moving to the river when he calls your check raise on the turn?
Flush draws and maybe ace king, I would think.
Well, flush draws and an ace, right? A bluff catching ace.
Yep.
So, or maybe jack 10. So my question is that, so let's take those three hands. Flush draws, a bluff catching ace, and jack 10. If you bet the river, okay, what is he going to raise with at the end there? it's the same thing as check folding because like, is he gonna raise? Is he gonna turn an ace into a bluff? He's not even gonna raise with ace king or jack 10 most likely.
Right.
So I think it's sort of the same thing, you know?
Okay, that makes sense. Yep, that makes sense.
So, anyways, thanks for the call. Hey guys, if you like what you've seen here, please click on the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time we put up a new video. And if you want to check out CrushLivePoker.com for the first month free, use the code YTA200. Click on the link right there.